to say, it's enjoyable to be with an organization where when you have a chat with them, and then you go onto the website and you hear a little bit about the culture, and then you show up at a meeting, they actually sync. So today we're going to be talking about a few of the principles that are explored in leadership and self-deception. We hope that your curiosity is piqued. We hope that you see the profound impact that our mindset actually makes on things. I think this whole concept of true group dentistry versus corporate dentistry, I think you've got that. I think that's there. That's incredibly powerful. It's not just about the methodical approach toward administration, systems, and processes, but it's the very way that we see ourselves, our roles, who we are as individuals and the people around us. And I think that's really what makes the difference between the corporate side and the group side. So I admire this organization. It's wonderful to be here and be part of it. This is what we're going to do today. In thinking about some of the things that you're dealing with, I imagine none of you, when you went into dentistry, into the profession, decided you sat down and you thought, you know what, I'd like to someday deal with employee problems. You know what I'd really like to do? I'd like to deal with a lot of turnover. That would be fun. You know what would be great is if we could just deal with customers and patients that just don't really understand reality and expect things that aren't possible. That's what I'd like to deal with. Patients that want us to present as well as if they're the only person in the entire world. I don't think any of you, when you started off, sat down and thought it'd be wonderful to deal with a group of people where the morale is probably winding down, there's intrigue and political stuff going on in an office or in an environment. I don't think that's the goal or the intention with any of these things. Yet, of course, if you're normal, if your office is peopled by people, you're running into some of these things. Talking about the dynamic tension that can exist within a team, but the fact that there is a necessary dynamic tension that needs to exist. Sometimes teams think that the secret is to avoid disagreement and conflict, whereas the most successful and transformative teams are the ones that learn how to leverage disagreement and conflict. Learning how to disagree productively is one of the most powerful things that an organization can ever learn to do. Sometimes we worship at this altar of consensus and peace, and usually that means stifling particular ideas or notions or not bringing them up because they might disagree with something else. But learning how to disagree productively is an incredibly powerful thing. We're going to take a look at that today. And our goal is to give you something both intellectually stimulating, diving into some philosophical principles that will literally change the way that we see things, but at the same time allow you to leave with some practical tools that you can go back and start doing things a little bit differently. Now, in order to set this up, it's important that we first explore this idea of why mindset even matters, why we're talking about mindset to begin with. I want you all to imagine that you are farmers. As a farmer, the success of your farm is predicated on the quality of your harvest. If I have a great harvest, I'm going to be able to take that to market. I'm going to be able to sell, make some money, and survive another year. Fair to say? The harvest is key. Because that harvest is so absolutely critical, I'm going to go out and spend a lot of time and energy, money, resources on finding and procuring the best seeds money can buy. I'm going to talk to other farms. I'm going to go to some trade shows. I'm going to have conversations. I might do a little bit of testing here and there. But I will spare no expense to bring the best seeds as possible back to my farm. Now, as I bring those seeds back to my farm, having spent a lot of time, energy, and money on these seeds, what else is there at my farm that I have some control over that ultimately will determine the quality of the harvest besides the seed? Soil. So what would happen if I brought back some fantastic seeds and I planted them in toxic soil? Now I want you to think for just a moment about this metaphor. I want you to think of the seeds as processes, systems, skills, behaviors. You cannot have a productive farm without seeds. You have got to have methodical administrative processes, procedures, and the best ones that money can buy. You've got to bring in great skills and behavioral systems and such to deal with the realities of the organizational demands that you're experiencing on a regular basis. But if I'm bringing these seeds back into my own practice and I'm planting them in less than fertile soil, not much is going to come from that. The scary thing is that what I'll often do is blame the seed. Well, this administrative procedure they've given me, or this process, oh, it might have worked great somewhere else, but it's not good for us. we find ways to blame the seed without ever questioning our own soil. Sometimes we neglect to even think about the quality of the soil as we're planting these seeds. Sometimes when you have an organization, it gives you some wonderful best practice seeds that have worked and had great success in other areas. I might bring those back and then try to plant them, and if they fail to give me any kind of a yield, my default will be to blame the seed without giving a lot of thought to the soil into which it's planted. Our mindset is the soil. Our mindset is the way that we see things. It's the way that we see ourselves. It's the way that we see others. It's the way that we see our obligations one to another. It's the way people are experiencing me, the way that people are seeing me, the way that I'm seeing them. This mindset world, which is different than the behavioral world, mindset is what drives behavior. Behavior is what drives results. Oftentimes, the very way that we see the problem is the problem. Just think about this for a moment. If I see an individual as a friend, there are a finite number of behaviors that naturally occur to me to do. Things that I might think about, they naturally occur. They're a friend. There's a lot of different behaviors. If I see somebody as an enemy, there are an entirely different set of behaviors that will naturally flow from that mindset or the way that I would see that individual. Now, there's plenty of overlap. There are behaviors that I would do both with a friend as well as with an enemy. But the very mindset that I have determines the way that that behavior lands on that individual. The mindset is an incredibly powerful thing, but we spend more time on transitioning or manipulating or changing our behaviors. And when we're trying to manipulate our own behaviors and change behaviors or skills or things along those lines without taking into account the underlying mindset, we're leaving something behind that can have a massive impact on the success of our organization. In fact, McKinsey & Company, in a study, this is a few years ago, stated that organizations that identify and address pervasive mindsets at the outset are 4 times more likely to succeed in organizational change efforts than are companies that overlook this stage. It's saying the organizations that pause and consider before they're planting seeds, or even as those seeds are being planted, the ones that pause and consider the quality of the soil into which they're being planted, that's quite a percentage growth. 4 times, 400% more likely to succeed in organizational change efforts. When we're talking about silver to black ribbons, we're talking about growth, we're talking about attentiveness to our customers, to our patients. If we're neglecting to focus on our mindset, the mindset of the people that we work with, as well as the mindset of those that we serve and that we work with, we're setting aside something that could contribute to our success by 400%. That's not just careless, that's irresponsible. It's actually counterproductive. That's why we're going to talk a little bit about mindset, something very powerful. Now, in order to do this, what we're going to try to accomplish today is cover 2 self-awareness tools. These are tools to help us begin to see things a little bit more clearly. I loved the fact that you started off with gratitude. It's interesting. Maybe a generation ago in a lot of organizations, that very feel of expressing gratitude in a corporate setting feels soft, feels emotional. All right, let's get on with the real organizational stuff. The irony, it's the pausing and considering and expressing gratitude that helps us align ourselves with true reality, seeing things as they really are. And we actually gain clarity when we express gratitude. Life is full of good as well as bad, but very often it's so much easier to focus on the bad. And we pause, we recalibrate, we expand that vision of what reality is. We're in a far better position to deal with the problems and issues of the day when we're grateful. I just love that. That was fantastic.